My name is Elizabeth Guerrero, and I have been with the Parkinson's Foundation for a little over 3 years. And so I am the Community Education and Outreach Manager for the South Central chapter. So we are a national nonprofit covering all over the US, and then we're broken down into chapters as well. So I cover Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. How many of you are familiar with the Parkinson's Foundation? Okay, great. So what we do, I'm going to kind of go into what we do at the foundation. So we are the nation's leading community for people living with Parkinson's and those who are caring for them, loved ones, and we are all in a goal of working to end this disease. We have the largest presence in the Parkinson's community across the country and the globe, and everything we do we do in concert with the Parkinson's community. So we're always talking with the Parkinson's community, surveying about what the Parkinson's community wants to learn about, what research needs to be done as well, and how to have better access to care. So we try to have everything that you need to live better with Parkinson's today, and that's for the person with Parkinson's and then the caregiver as well. So the urgency. Our vision is a world where no one has Parkinson's disease, and our mission is urgent. So nearly 90,000 new cases of Parkinson's are diagnosed each year. And just last year, that was raised from, this used to be estimated as 60,000 per year. And after a comprehensive research study, it was found that 90,000, it was increased from 60,000 to 90,000 new cases per year. Parkinson's is the second most common neurodegenerative disease, and prevalence is expected to rise to 1.2 million people in the next 20 years. It primarily impacts individuals over the age of 60, and it is a huge economic burden. At the Parkinson's Foundation, we believe that people with Parkinson's deserve both the promise of a cure for tomorrow and a better life today. While there is no cure yet, treatment and expert care can improve quality of life. So what we do, we bring together people with Parkinson's, caregivers, medical professionals, and researchers to support cutting-edge research that leads to breakthroughs in treatments and a cure. We ensure every person with Parkinson's has access to the best care and empower you and your family with resources and emotional support as well. Now let's look at how we are advancing research toward a cure. Since the launch of the foundation, we have funded more than $449 million in groundbreaking research and care, fundamentally transforming the way we diagnose and treat Parkinson's. So since 2010, the foundation has supported more than 670 scientists researching Parkinson's. Research has always been paramount. In 1969, a Parkinson's Foundation leader and PD expert published the first blind clinical trial of levodopa, proving the medication could relieve Parkinson's symptoms. So we use the expertise of our PD community, who help us identify needs and drive cutting-edge research on the issues they care about the most. We created the first research agenda to improve the care of women living with PD, addressing the long-standing, gender disparities in Parkinson's care and research. And I will say that has come quite a long way over the years. And then in addition, we have our virtual biotech, which is drug discovery and development, which aims to deliver new treatments in years, not decades. And so this past year, 2 years ago, we developed a partnership with Parkinson's UK, and we are providing targeted funding to develop new therapies and medications while increasing resources for research and development. And this is our ongoing study that we're doing. Our first goal was to get to 3,500, and we met that, and we just hit 15,000, mapping the future of Parkinson's disease. It's a first of its kind national initiative that provides genetic testing for clinically relevant PD-related genes and counseling to people with Parkinson's at no cost. Excuse me. And this is in English and in Spanish. So PD Generation aims to provide genetic testing and counseling, and the goal of PD Generation is to leverage genetics as a powerful tool to help us uncover what is responsible for slowing or stopping the progression of Parkinson's. So this knowledge will help propel us towards optimizing treatments and clinical trials. And so currently genetic tests are either not available or not affordable for people with PD and are not covered by health insurance or offered with genetic counseling. Therefore, most people with Parkinson's and their clinicians do not know if they carry the genetic mutations, and which is important. So PD Generation addresses this unmet need and provides genetic testing at no cost to study participants through in-person sites and at-home kit. So this is actually a really easy test to take if you're interested in doing it. And I do have a postcard with the information on it as well. But you can get an in-home kit, and it's just a cheek swab, and then you send it off, it's tested, and then you get a call and you get follow-ups from us, and you also get genetic counseling as well. And then in addition, we have a testing site if you prefer to do it in person at UT Health San Antonio. And so they are a local testing site as well. And then for today, the foundation's mission is to ensure that people with Parkinson's and their care team have a common understanding of quality care. While everyone's experience with Parkinson's is different, having access to a comprehensive team will enable people with Parkinson's to better manage their symptoms and improve quality of life. And so with this, we aim to meet this need through our global care network. And with that, we have comprehensive care centers, and we have centers of excellence. And the goal of this is so that people with Parkinson's have access to high quality care for health professionals to advance and share their knowledge. And so what's wonderful is in Texas, we have 2 locations, and one's here in San Antonio. So the UT Health San Antonio was announced as a comprehensive care center 2 years ago. And so they have absolutely a wonderful care team, wonderful physicians, and many movement disorder specialists. And then with me being on the education and outreach team, this right here is a lot of what I do, bringing empowering resources to you and helping people get the support that they need as well. So we have a very robust library, and we have a lot of resources. And so the way that I try to explain it is we have something to cater to your learning style. So everybody has their different learning style. Some people like podcasts, some people like webinars, some people like to read a book. And so we have something for all of that as well. 2 of our wonderful resources that we have revamped is the newly diagnosed guide, and I do have some here, and that it's a small booklet. And what I love about it is that when someone is diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, you're overwhelmed at first, and it takes time to settle into your diagnosis. But the guide is just this great resource to take with you and to look at on your own time. And it's not large, it's just a few pages. It tells you what are your 5 basic needs, what are the first 5 things that you need to do to get started on the right journey. So I do highly encourage that resource. And then our hospital safety guide, it used to be called the Aware and Care Kit, and we have evolved it by listening to the Parkinson's community. The Aware and Care Kit had lots of small print, and so we made the print bigger and we adapted it so it wasn't a lot of loose papers, it was just all in a booklet. I do have some here, but I encourage everyone, and I'll pass these out whenever Stephen is talking as well. These are our the resources that I'm going to be talking about. It's a front and back, but it also has a checkbox where you can order one, and then you just put your address on the back as well, and then we'll mail it to you, and then also go into our helpline as well. I do want to make a note about our Moving Day walk. It is our annual fundraiser, and we have one in San Antonio. And so if that's something that you're ever interested in getting involved in, we do it every April. And I'll be happy to send Lucy more information whenever we have a location and a date. But I will say it is a lot of fun. We have mariachis there, and we have different exercise professionals doing different exercises that are great for Parkinson's, for symptoms, managing your symptoms. And it's just a really great way for camaraderie and everyone to come together. And with that, with our Moving Day fundraisers across the nation, we've raised $44.8 million to support research and wellness programs across the country. So in addition, and this kind of goes into different learning styles, our PD Health at Home hosts weekly educational and wellness events. So we have something every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And Monday is Mindfulness Mondays. Mindfulness is a very powerful tool with Parkinson's symptom management. Wednesdays is education. So that is another thing where we survey the Parkinson's community. What do you want to learn about? Where do we need to fill a gap in education? And we find an expert speaker and put together an educational webinar for that. And then Friday is Fitness Fridays. And so it's a fitness video where you can follow along. It's live, and it's a lot of fun too. It's usually very energetic as well. And then a note about our impact. We have our local presence and impact. Our chapters, which we're the South Central chapter, have a direct impact on the lives of people living with Parkinson's. We provide PD communities with access to local resources and services, support from our helpline, health and wellness classes through our grants, local education programs and events. And most chapters partner with one or more of the part of our global care community. So for us, that's UT Health San Antonio, funding for local programs, volunteer opportunities, and all chapters educate community about Parkinson's disease while raising awareness and leading fundraising events such as the Moving Day event to help ensure that people with PD, their families and caregivers live a full life. The foundation provides free educational materials for our local networks to distribute in their communities, while our helpline is always ready to assist with information and local referrals. And then I wanted to dive in briefly into resources for veterans living with Parkinson's disease and for caregivers as well. And so we partnered with the VA in 2021, and we developed a FAQ document, and I do have some over here, and at the bottom of this slide I have where you can access it online as well, so parkinson.org/veterans. And with that, 110,000 veterans with Parkinson's disease receive care through the VA. And for some veterans, developing Parkinson's disease can be associated with exposure to Agent Orange or other herbicides during their military service. And veterans with PD who were exposed to certain herbicides during their service may be eligible for disability compensation and health care. So I have several of those FAQs, and so I'm going to stay afterwards. If anybody wants one, please take one. I also want to share that the Brooke Army Medical Center has 2 brand new neurologists that specialize in movement disorders, so specialize in Parkinson's care. And so they are a resource, a local resource for you as well. And then literature for care partners and care courses. These are things that we have developed to help the caregiver along the journey as well. Our Caring and Coping book is wonderful. It is digital download, or you can listen to it on audiobook. And then we also have a caregiver program, which are self-paced courses, and just kind of a lot of it's videos, some reading, but it just covers different topics to help you as a caregiver to care for yourself, to prevent burnout, and to meet your needs as well, your nutrition needs, sleep, understand sleep better with Parkinson's as well, as that is a very hot topic, a common problem with Parkinson's disease. And so with that, at the bottom of the slide, it's parkinson.org/care partner program. And then I have a postcard about it as well. This is a really easy way to order resources, and our resources are 100% free. And so if you just go to parkinson.org/store, it's just a web page like a store, and so you just check the resources that you want, put in your address, and we mail it directly to you. And so these are 2 of our wonderful resources, our mostly accessed resources. Our website, it's very comprehensive, and so it's a good thing just to kind of get on, navigate. Our search button is great, so just going to the search button and typing in what you want to learn about, it's very user-friendly. And then in addition, our helpline is wonderful, and that's it's 1-800-473-4636. I'm going to give everybody a postcard as well with the number on it, but our helpline, you will get an actual person on the phone. And our helpline specialists are so knowledgeable, so lovely. One ran a support group for 15 years. They're health educators, nurses, social workers, and just the knowledge and then the resources that they have are even greater than mine. They have it's very robust. And so you're not going to come to them with any question that they probably haven't heard yet. And so you use them as, in between doctor's visits, just any question that you don't want to bother with, going on the internet is just, confusing. And so if you're not finding it on our website, or you don't want to navigate the website, call our helpline. They're there to help you. They're so wonderful. In addition, I have a flyer over here as well. We are doing a local education event not too far from here at the Morgan's Multi-Assistance Center, the MAC, and it's going to be on nutrition and Parkinson's. And so we have Dr. Okinis Bao. She's at UT Health San Antonio. She is a neurologist that specializes in Parkinson's as a movement disorder specialist, and she is going to speak about the gut-brain connection, which is a very hot topic. So she's going to do a deep dive into that. And then we have a registered dietitian from New Braunfels that's going to speak about foods that are neuroprotective, protective for your brain, that also help with symptoms of Parkinson's, sleep, mood, cognition, constipation. And so, and then also a health coach is going to speak, because UT Health San Antonio has a community grant that we are funding on health coaching with nutrition. So she's going to speak as well. And then we're going to have a robust resource fair as well. So I have flyers for that, and I highly encourage, if you can make it, please do come. And so now I'd like to invite Stephen Goffer to come up and share a little bit about himself and his role with the Parkinson's Foundation.
I'm Steve Goffer. I appreciate you all inviting us out today. I'm a retired Army physical therapist. I'm the previous dean of the School of Physical Therapy at Incarnate Word, and I have Parkinson's disease. And I've had it for the last 10 years. I was diagnosed at 45. I'm 57 now. Wish I was 47. And I'd like to answer any questions I can for you, and I'd like to advocate for us as veterans of Parkinson's disease, and let you know that the Parkinson's Foundation recruited me to be on the PPAC, which is the People with Parkinson's Disease Advisory Council. So all these materials that they create, they pass through the group that I'm on, this 15-person panel. There's folks with Parkinson's disease and folks whose spouses or family members have it. And we try to make sure that we have the materials are appropriate for our needs. And the needs for folks with Parkinson's disease is so different from person to person. I mean, I've had it for 15 to 10 years, 12 years now. And what I experience is not what you may experience. I don't tremor very much. I'm pretty good. Unless you get me riled up, and I'll lose my speech, and I'll start shaking my microphone, and I have a hard time walking sometimes. But you may have Parkinson's disease where you tremor all the whole time you're at rest. You may have difficulty with walking or standing. I fall backwards into a chair every time I try to stand up, most of the time, at home at least. And my spouse gets to deal with all my complaints or concerns or my hollering in bed or screaming. And we have this whole REM sleep disorder is common with folks with Parkinson's disease. And every now and then I'll punch and knock my phone off a nightstand at night, where most folks don't move when they sleep. They don't have Parkinson's disease. I encourage you to get a hold of those materials if you think you have Parkinson's disease or you think you may see folks around you that do. This brochure of 10 early warning signs, kind of like the stroke signs we look for. Yes, sir.
Just how was it diagnosed that you had Parkinson's? What symptoms did you have that you decided to go see a doctor or whatever you did?
That's a great question. So I did not have normal symptoms and signs and symptoms. I had my foot made a fist in my shoe when I was trying to run, and my toenails were dug in the ground, into the sole of my shoe, and I was trying to run for my physical fitness test, and I couldn't run. I'd stop and I'd stretch my toes out and run the next 100 yards, and I'd stretch my toes out. And I'm an Army physical therapist. I thought, what's wrong with me? I can't run right. I must have a problem. It must be just some sports problem. And it took me 3 or 4 years of talking to my colleagues and my neurologist friends. And they, at first, they didn't know what was going on. They thought I might have ALS, I had Lou Gehrig's disease. So my big complaints were I couldn't run well. I told the doc that when I reached my turn signal, I had to think about it. And that's kind of an odd thing to say, right? So I had to think about it. What's that mean? It was actually just slow. So when I reached my turn signal on the car, I had to think about it, and I had to give myself time to do it, because my left side is different than my right side. And most Parkinson's disease generally starts on one side more than the other. I didn't even know that. I was a physical therapist. I didn't know that. But then my NCOIC told me, hey, you don't swing your arm when you walk anymore. So I'd be walking along, and this left arm would stay still, and the right arm is just going to town. And even that didn't spark me. So that was my thing. No arm swing, claw toes, and slow movement. So he asked us why the incidence of Parkinson's disease is going up. And I think that it's going up because there's more of us in the right age, but there's also more of us who are exposed to chemicals during our youth. And we know that Parkinson's disease is such a bizarre cluster of symptoms that I wouldn't have been diagnosed for years after I got it, because at least I knew something was wrong. Yeah, I'm going to town now. If you get nervous or you get a little anxious, and I hate the word anxious, the symptoms get worse.
One other question, if
Sure.
I may. With the increase in amount of money for this research, what kind of progress has been made or is being made?
I think that as far as implanting devices, like I had my brain stimulator put in last May, and that's taken my medication use from, I taking pills like crazy. Every 3 hours I was taking 3 or 4 pills. And now I'm taking 1 pill every 3 or 4 hours. And if I turn my stimulator up a little bit, I would stop shaking like this for some reason. So, and also resourcing. I think the Parkinson's Foundation has gotten a lot of money as far as other alternative medication treatments and the value of nutrition. Like when I first got diagnosed, I didn't believe nutrition had anything to do with my presentation of my disease. But now I know if I have a steak for lunch, my 1 o'clock dose medication is not going to work at all. And it's because you learned about COVID, about this lock and key stuff, right? So viruses have like a key on their outside of their body, and your guts have a lock mechanism where the medication gets on the lock and it opens the door to your gut. For whatever reason, proteins have the same lock and key mechanism as levodopa carbidopa, which I take for this mess. So if you eat the meat first, for 2 hours, medication doesn't do anything. So I won't be able to walk fast. I'll have to lay down and maybe take another dose of medication as soon as I can to get myself back to working normally again. Goodness gracious, I'm shaking like a leaf. This is one of the reasons I stopped teaching. My students thought I was scared of them. They're like, oh goodness, the dean's scared of the kids. So any other questions I can answer for you? Sir?
Is there a definitive test that can be done to determine whether or not you have the disease?
So that's one of the things they're working on, but it's really a clinical diagnosis. So you go see the doc sees you shaking like me, they see you dragging your feet, they see you doing this walk. Then they'll ask you to do, they'll say, open and close your finger. And that's about normal, almost normal. And there's, so less movement speed and less movement range. So like I can try to, so they do these tests, they call them rapid alternating movements. And they'll say this versus that, and they'll have you tap your heel, and then see which one works better. And usually you'll notice a difference from side to side. When I was diagnosed, I was not like that. And so I didn't look like Parkinson's disease. So they sent me to get a thing called a DAT scan. And it's a brain scan where they tag, put an injection in your arm, and it tags the levodopa, carbidopa cells in your brain. And then you do a scan of it to see if they're there or not there. And if you have a loss of probably 80% of them, you can see that they're not there. But really, it takes a lot of time to go from all the number of cells I'm supposed to have down to enough to let you see it in my physical presentation, and down to a point where you can see it on the DAT scan. So it's a really expensive test. The only reason I got it done is because I was at BAMC, and they finally said, well, this lieutenant colonel's got something wrong with it, we don't know what it is. They checked me out for ALS, and they said, well, it could be this. But that DAT scan really isn't not that valuable unless you're trying to figure out how to throw me out of the Army or not. But really, it's about how you present. So the VA, they presume it's service connected now. So if you have symptoms and you want to talk to the VA, it's a presumptive condition for folks our age who are in Vietnam or in places where there are burn pits, or places like with the Marine Corps, Fort Lejeune, Camp Lejeune. So if you have the symptoms going on, I would recommend you talk to the VA as soon as you can, because I'm a 100% disabled veteran, like probably most of y'all are. And it's not, when they look at you, they don't care if you got a label. You don't get disability for having Parkinson's disease. You have disability for not being able to walk right, not being able to use your hands right, not being able to, I can't write a sentence with my dominant hand anymore, because it's just little tiny words. And it's called micrographia. You start with like your first initial, big initial, and it goes little tiny, where you can't read it. So other questions? That's the most fun part.
Is there any physical therapy exercise or program that can help with the writing? Is there I guess, is it just practice?
I haven't been successful in that yet, but most of the physical therapy exercises are focused on these big movements. So they'll ask you to big steps out, trying to get your body to open up, because our bodies tend to cramp in and get real stiff, right? Which is the same as the writing. We start writing and we get cramped. It's kind of like this thing. I can make big letters with that hand. I can't make big letters with this hand. I'm actually going to try to work on that a little bit. I'm going to buy one of those books to get the kids, teach them how to write. And I'm going to make big giant letters, try to see if I can get it to go. But not so much for that. But the other thing is voice. Have you noticed that your voice is really slow, quiet, and breathy? I call it the Clint Eastwood voice. I'm here to talk to you today about Parkinson's disease. I had an injection in my throat to make that a little better, and that worked pretty well. If you don't mind getting an injection in your throat. Yeah. What's that?
He's saying it didn't work, and I'm saying it did work.
It works for a while, right? It wears off unless you go back and have the.
He had the belly fat.
You had to put in there.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
It did.
Yeah. I had mine a long time ago, and I think I was also underdosed. So when I have the right amount of medication in me, I do pretty well. If I don't take medication regularly, or my diet is not aligned well, I'm worse. Anyone have deep brain stimulator? I'm sorry, go ahead, ma'am.
No, I don't have,
Sure.
I do have a question.
Yes,
My
ma'am.
one who is self-diagnosing themselves
Mhm.
confuse neuropathy with Parkinson's. You mentioned the gait issue.
Right. So is it neuropathy versus Parkinson's disease?
If one is self-diagnosing, might they confuse the two?
I think that neuropathy, if you can confuse a few pieces and parts of Parkinson's disease, so like the part about balance deficits, we fall down or we'd like to walk with our feet wider apart, that looks a lot like the ataxia that may come with having your peripheral neuropathy, where you can't feel your feet, you can't know where your feet are in space. That may look like Parkinson's disease sometimes, but it wouldn't be the rate dependent or the speed of motion kind of stuff. A peripheral neuropathy should show up as loss of sensation first, loss of position sense, and then loss of strength. Where Parkinson's disease is more about rate, speed of movement. And you may get weakness over time because you stop moving, because we get embarrassed, or we get to where we don't do as much anymore. So we get weaker then, but my grip strength is pretty good, even though I can't do this fast. So, did that answer your question, ma'am?
Right.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
My husband is down in home health care and has been for over a year, close to 2 years. And his family has had Parkinson's. and or symptoms of Parkinson's, whether it really was or not, I have no idea. But I have noticed in the past 6 months or so that he just would soon stay in bed. Is that part of the problem?
Fatigue
Can it
is a
be?
huge problem. Fatigue and apathy, not wanting to do anything, not caring to do anything. Because it's fatiguing to move around all the time when you're all tightened up. I've gained like 25 pounds since I had my brain surgery because I was always moving and burning calories like crazy, which was good, but not as good when you're, it was fatiguing out all the time. But if he's tightened up and doesn't want to move and feels fatigue and feels apathy and feels depression, all those feelings, even though we're told as military folks, they're not supposed to know about, we're not supposed to think about depression or anxiety, but those things are chemically mediated. Your dopamine in your brain does a lot of stuff. It does this movement disorder things, but it also does joy and happiness and excitability about doing things. And we talked about 80% of those cells that make dopamine are gone by the time you start to have any tremor at all. All those chemical mediators are gone for joy and happiness too. So if you've noticed that your spouse or your care partner has had a progressive or loss of joy in doing things, or they don't want to get involved anymore because they're tired, or they may say they're tired, but they don't really, we don't want to say, I never wanted to say I had anxiety. I never wanted to say that I had depression. I was a physical therapist, and how the PT always asks you, or the doc always asks you, have you experienced less joy in doing things? Do you no longer do the things you used to have fun? And I recall being a therapist saying to myself, what's fun? I just asked this person this question, but I don't know what fun is anymore. I was a fun guy, I think, in college, but my wife says, no, you weren't. But depression, anxiety, and apathy are huge components of Parkinson's disease. And, we glossed over them about coping and mood, but they are ridiculously involved. And the other things that are scary for folks with Parkinson's disease is hallucinations. Some medications that we take can cause hallucinations. The disease process doesn't really cause hallucinations, but that was one of the most terrifying things I was told when I first got diagnosed. I went to a support group meeting in New Braunfels, and Mac told me, well, hallucinations are pain. And I thought to myself, what does that mean? How is that? And I couldn't picture myself what a hallucination was because I don't have the experience with that. And I thought to myself, Roger Rabbit movie, they had, it's crazy stuff in the room. He told me, no, it's not like that. It's just things that shouldn't be there that are there. And he ignored the thing that shouldn't be there. So the way they're describing it now, I think, is if you have rather than creating a whole new thing in your brain, it just misseeing things. So this walker may look like there's a dog laying on the ground next to you instead, or maybe if there's a pile of towels or some laundry may look like a person, or you may think like a person just walked past you. That's called a passing. So like you were at the corner of the hallway and you swore somebody just walked by you, but they didn't. So those are things that are scary for me as a person with Parkinson's disease. Sir.
What about cognizance? What does that mean? And how does it work on with Parkinson's?
So cognition, we're learning a lot more about cognition and dementia and accessing information, I guess. Generally, people with Parkinson's disease don't have dementia as a primary concern. Now, later in life, as we're all aging, we have some age-related changes in ability to access information in our memory. But they don't always come together in Parkinson's disease. Now, you can have 2 or 3 things at a time going on. You can have some dementia going on from another reason. You can have Parkinson's disease at the same time. But at least the research right now says that if you're early onset Parkinson's disease, in your 50s or 60s, you're less probable to have dementia. If you get diagnosed later in life, you may have more progression toward dementia. But you don't have to have it at all. And like, I thought I had some dementia. I had some cognitive things that I had concerns with. So I had neuropsych testing. Anyone had neuropsych testing before? It's a 3-hour test where they ask you those 4 things. Here's those 4 things you just named, and I'm gonna ask you again later what those 4 things. I love that test. Oh,
We all like trees.
I hate that test. I should have a class on how to cheat that test. There's some tricks. They're asking you about tools, clothing items, colors, and plant and vegetables. And if you categorize them as those things, you memorize them faster than if you just say, when they tell you carrot, shorts, hat, trowel. You can cheat that test a little bit. And I don't think it's cheating the test. I think it's knowing how to use your skills you've got in your head to not be scared by what the test is asking you and not be hindered by it. With Parkinson's disease, the cognitive things may be more about rate, speed of accessing information, and speed of producing speech in response. So like for some reason my meds kicked in, so I'm not shaking as much, and I can speak better, but the meds take about 20 minutes to kick in, and they last about 3 hours for me. And I just took one before I stood up, and so I was in a low spot in my medication dose, and now before I had my brain surgery done, I'd be right now hitting a high spot, my body absorbing that medication, and then I would start doing the Michael J. Fox thing, the dance. But that was my primary concern as a patient, was the dance. I felt like people were watching me all the time, and if I got excited or if I got angry, not angry, I was never an angry person, I don't think. I also didn't have any anxiety.
Sure.
Exactly. But if my wife would say, if I got upset, I said, I want to build a house in New Braunfels, I want to build a house in San Antonio. I'd start pointing. And she'd say, don't point at me. I was like, I'm not trying to point at you, I just can't, when I get excited, I get going, I get the dance going. But this brain surgery really helped out. I had a pacemaker kind of put it here, and my wires go up my neck, and they go behind this ear, and they go into my brain on 2 sides. And that neurostimulator is set up right now to turn off all my dance. It doesn't do a ton for my Parkinson's disease, but I can take the medication I need for Parkinson's to feel better, and the dance is turned off by my brain stimulator. And the old days, 10 years ago, they used to say the brain stimulator was a last ditch effort to keep you moving and not be upset and problematic. Nowadays we're realizing that anything that'll keep you moving early in the disease process and keep moving all along is better. I mean, some of us that have had the disease for a long time, maybe been told, well, don't take that levodopa carbidopa medication too soon, because you can only take it for 10 years. And it's not really true. You take more and more over time. But I think that treating us earlier, whether it's medication or with this brain stimulator, allows me to stay mobile and active and not get weaker, not fall and break my hip, not get all these problems that we know that you can get from lack of socialization, lack of mobility. We're better off doing it sooner than later to keep moving. Yes, ma'am.
Well, we recently had a friend who had to be tested first.
Right.
We had a friend with Parkinson's, and it had advanced to the point where they wanted to do this brain stimulator, and she went in, she had to be tested.
Right.
And she did not qualify for
So-
the implant. How do they determine that?
So having the brain surgery can make a couple things worse. It can make your voice worse. It can make your cognition worse. So if you have any signs of dementia, they will not let you have the brain stimulator put in. Because you can kind of imagine the brain stimulator, they gotta go, the wires gotta go through your brain, and if it messes a few things up on the way, you don't wanna be already down here and then get put down here, function-wise. But that's generally the first thing that they look at is that neuropsych testing I described. That test was done to me just to decide if I could still have the implant done. And also speech can get worse with it too.
Do you know of any local and nearby here for Rocksteady Boxing?
I do. So there's, oh, I'm sorry.
My husband's done Rocksteady Boxing in the past, and we've just recently moved here. And
So a couple of the exercises that have been shown to be very good for Parkinson's disease are dance and Tai Chi and boxing. And so there's Steve Payne is a Rocksteady boxing coach. There's also one in New Braunfels, but that's a little quite a drive. And there's like 3 in town. And I'll try to look up my phone and look for you in a second. It's something that you can give it to her. Great. I don't know why boxing is good for it, except that if you integrate repeated movements and things that are kind of automatic, you know, I guess violence is automatic in us, I guess, but what we mentioned earlier, my arm wouldn't swing. It's about automatic motions. So automaticity goes away. So like when I have to roll over in bed, I have to think about how do I roll over in bed? I figure out what do you do with your arms? What do you do with your legs? How do you make this happen? So it can be really a struggle to roll over in bed, it can be a struggle to move things. But for some reason, if you can teach someone to repeat motions, and whether they use their feet as well, kick in the bag, punch in the bag, and it's the secondary thing that we're doing at the same time, which is dual tasking. So has your doc ever had you do the test where you stand up from the chair, you walk 10 feet, and you go back and you sit in the chair, right? The second way to do that test is do that with a cup of coffee in your hand. So that's a dual task. It makes you use your brain to hold the cup without spilling it, and get up and get down without falling down and walk a distance. Dual tasking is trainable, and you can get better at it. And boxing and Parkinson's disease is one thing that you can do dual tasking. So they'll say, hook. You gotta remember this is a hook. They say, no, I said left hook. Oh crap, left hook. And cross and jab, and having someone call out those things to you, whether it's on a video or in person, makes you dual task. I have to remember what it is, know what the words are, know what the movement is, and do it. So that's why boxing I think is pretty good. Similarly, dancing is very good. It's a tango. I mean, if you can do those things all at once. Tango is what the research was done on. I don't know why they chose tango. They really should have done. Maybe they were in the East Coast or something. They weren't down here in Texas. Cotton Eye Joe. Oh, there you go. Other questions? Sir, well, hold on, he beat you to it.
What is the cause
Oh,
of Parkinson's?
the cause? So Parkinson's disease, the cause is these little tiny cells in your brain create the chemical neurotransmitter, the chemical transmitter that lets your body do automatic movements. It also does some cognition, more so mood than cognition in your brain. And when those cells die and they don't produce that chemical anymore, then you slowly start losing the ability to do the things that that part of your brain does. So it's a
Basically a brain disorder.
it is a degenerative neurological brain disorder, yes. So those little tiny cells, they're actually melanin cells in your brain. So they call it the substantia nigra. It's a dark colored spot in your brain. And it's supposed to be big comma shape, like a big comma, dot with a hook on it. And my brain scan shows a big dot. I lost my hook. So
And the next question is, how do you treat that?
So prevention is the best thing we can do. So get diagnosed early and try to keep practicing the things that's how your part of your brain does. So that the big movements, instead of getting tight and small, you get big and loud. And exercise is, oddly enough, one of the most effective things we can do. And it may sound like the physical therapist to me just talking crap about, hey, we're going to exercise. But actually, exercise is medicine in Parkinson's disease. And there's one of these flyers over here that I want to show you. I hate walking in front of people. Am I out of range? So the research on Parkinson's disease tells us that if you vigorously exercise 3 to 5 times a week, and that's vigorous, I mean, sweating. You can't just stroll. Strolling will not give you the neuroprotective qualities of exercise. So like if I go out and ride a bike, I can't walk fast enough to get a good exercise in myself. I can ride a bike. And stationary bike vigorously for 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week, has been shown to be very effective in reducing how much medication people need, and it can actually physically slow or reverse the process of the disease a little bit. Not a ton, but enough to where that's where a lot of the research is going, sir.
Is L-Dopa a good medication?
L-Dopa is the perfect medication for Parkinson's disease. It's been around since the 60s. So it's carbidopa, levodopa. It's kind of a combination medication, but it produces L-Dopa in your body. And it replaces what your body doesn't have from those little cells in your brain. But the problem is the side effects are not great. The side effects are the dancing movements, constipation, brain fog sometimes. So it is the medication that we've used for a long time. Did you ever watch the movie Awakenings with Robert De Niro and Robin Williams? That was the movie about the original folks that had a meningitis of some kind actually, and they treated them with L-Dopa, and they figured out that it worked well for unlocking folks from that kind of syndrome. But lost train of thought. Other questions? Did I answer your question, sir? Yeah. So I've got a jar of L-Dopa pills over my chair, and I take them every couple of days or a couple hours to keep my symptoms down. Yeah. So, and that's really kind of what I started off with 1 or 2 pills a day, and over 10 years I was up to 3 pills every 2.5 to 3 hours. And then my side effects were so bad that it wasn't giving me any relief, really. So
I started with essential tremor, and they had me on primidone.
Right.
And now that I have this early onset Parkinson's, they added the L-Dopa, but they still are giving me the primidone. Is that?
So essential tremor is different than Parkinson's disease,
I know.
but they smell the same, but they're a little different. So I can't tell you about that medication, unfortunately. The deep brain stimulator works well for that as well. And they've done that for research for quite a while, but it's a different location. I'm sorry, ma'am, I forgot to come back to you, ma'am. Oh, go ahead.
That's all right. going back to my husband again, about 15 or 20 years ago, I went with him to the doctor, a neurologist, and he said to me in round pear-shaped tones, "Your husband does not have Parkinson's. He has essential tremors." Can that lead to it?
They're not really, so essential tremor is a different condition than Parkinson's disease. It's not really related that much. It looks similar because you're tremoring, but Parkinson's disease is generally a tremor at rest. So I'm sitting doing nothing and I'm tremoring. Where essential tremors occur when I'm doing stuff too, right? And Parkinson's disease, early on, you stop shaking when you start doing something. So it's not really a progression generally, but again, you can have two problems. You can also have some other neurological problems like multi-system atrophy and supranuclear palsy, which are things that look a lot like those two things, but are much worse. And Lewy body dementia is another one that kind of scares us all. The day that I went to see my neurologist, and I said, I keep falling down to the right. I kind of fall back to the right, and he was like, "Whoa!" He checks me for supranuclear palsy, which is in the brain more problems. Thank goodness that wasn't the case. People used to ask me, why are you so upbeat? Why aren't you mad you have Parkinson's disease? And I tell them it's because I thought I had Lou Gehrig's disease for the first 6 months. This is a lot better. I can deal with Parkinson's disease. Sir.
Does Parkinson's have anything to do with short-term memory loss?
Not usually. No. So the question was, does Parkinson's disease relate to short-term memory loss? It's not a cardinal or an essential requirement for the disease diagnosis, but it can look like it. Like if I'm slow to respond, if I have to make words fast, a little slower than before, it looks like I'm thinking longer or I have the short-term memory loss, but it's about rate of production. I can't make my words as fast as I could. And you notice earlier when I was speaking, I was tongue-tied a little bit. So speed of movement to my tongue, my mouth would be slowed down, but not generally short-term memory loss. Now in advanced Parkinson's disease, you can get some dementia, which looks like short-term memory loss as well, but generally after 20 years of disease process, for someone as old as I am. Now, if you're diagnosed when you're 85 with Parkinson's disease, you may also have some age-related changes in short-term memory, but it may not be related totally to Parkinson's disease. This young lady asked me if there are some relations to genetic relations between Parkinson's disease. And we used to say that Parkinson's disease was only genetic when it was really young onset. So like Michael J. Fox was in his 30s, right? 20s or 30s. We knew he probably had a genetic component to his disease. But the Parkinson's Foundation has been doing this PD gene research that Elizabeth mentioned, and they're finding out that there's a lot more Parkinson's gene-related disease than we thought there was. A lot more. And that makes my kids worry, because I told them for the last 10 years, no, don't worry, it's my problem. It's not your problem, but it could be our problem. It's probably not a perfect genetic disease where if you have this gene, you're gonna get the disease. It's probably more like if you have this gene and you're exposed to a toxin or a chemical or something in your life, then it turns it on and then you may have Parkinson's disease. Like I worked in a dry cleaners as a kid, and we know that perchloroethylene chemicals for dry cleaning are probably a problem. I painted houses. I took a blowtorch and scraped 200 years of paint off a house next to my face for forever. And then I was an air defense artillery officer for a while too, so maybe there were some chemicals around the motor pool. So hopefully those things are not exposed to my kids and they don't have the disease process, but who knows? But the VA pays me for it, so I can still retire at a reasonable time. Well, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.